I'll like have that idea or like realize, oh, that's the person I need to reach out to,
It's a
or I
cliche,
should have asked this question.
but you really start with
There was
the
a
people
story
you know
a few months ago
your
now
immediate
about a woman named Sandra Bland.
I mean, I think that like having two people talking to each other is more interesting than having
in a physical space
space together, or just like in somebody's mind.
As opposed to someone talking and then hearing a soundbite.
Exactly.
Having two humans interacting.
Exactly. Yeah. And also having someone challenge, you know, when you're challenging an interviewee, it's satisfying for the listeners as well, because they feel like, oh, this person's really fighting for me. And, you know, why should you break away for script? Particularly, why should you ever break away for a script that says, and then I ask the person this, and then hearing the tape again? Just do it in the moment.
For me, like, I've started to, and you described an interview as a transaction. But in a way it is, and when I started thinking about it that way, when I started thinking of an interview as less of a touchy-feely conversation and more of, this is me doing my job to get what I need.
Yeah.
And I've had so many interviews where I come away from it kicking myself.
Yeah.
Because I was too polite.
Yes.
I didn't press them enough. I was too worried that it would go long. You know, things like that. And now when I look at it, I kind of look at an interview as like, my job is to come in and get good tape, or make good tape if I have to.
Make good tape.
And that kind of mindset, like, really, for some reason, it really helps me, and it really gets me over that politeness or whatever.
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, this is my job. I'm not here to impress this person. I mean,
Right.
Don't be a dick. You know, you still have to have some social niceties, and then you just keep. I mean, I guess so you keep plugging away, asking them this question. How do you know? Like, how is that box checked in your brain where I got this answer?
The answer is, I know when it's the tape I need, when I feel like I'm listening to the show. When it feels like I've you know, got the podcast in my earbuds and I'm listening to This American Life. That's when I know it's really worked. My question, I didn't even mic my questions for the longest time because I thought, well, I'm not going to use those. And then it turns out, no, I need to do that because, like, I always think, like, one of the most compelling things to hear on the radio is two people interacting in some sort of candid way. Normally when we think about that in a radio story, we're thinking two other people who aren't you know, the one holding the microphone, forgetting that we who are journalists and radio reporters are also people with, you know, actual ideas.
Yeah. Loves and
thoughts,
hates.
Passions.
And,
you know, foibles.
Well,
not your present company excluded.
Yourself, I come away from interviews, and again, listening to the tape and hating it, or listening to the tape and saying I didn't ask the right question there. A lot of the times, my politeness gets the best of me, or me trying to sound smart gets the best of me.
That's the problem. The trying to sound smart is a big
say
problem.
Something that I don't understand. They say a big word.
Right.
And instead of me saying, wait, what does that mean?
No.
I say, I don't want to look like a goof in front of the scientist.
Exactly.
You know?
And it's the worst impulse. I mean, I always say, like, I have every wrong attribute for this job. Like, I don't like to impose. I want people to like me. I want to seem, you know, like I know what folks are talking about.
Right.
And you can't. I mean, like, the way...
See, I would have thought the opposite. I feel like, and it's interesting for me to hear this because you're the person that oh, this guy interjects. This guy always says what he's thinking. This guy, you know.
No, I have a real hard time talking to people. I also hate making cold calls, which is a bad attribute for a reporter to have. But you know, if you behave like you know more than you do, then people will just say, oh, well, he knows it anyway, so I'll just tell him. But if you're going into an interview, like you know, you pretend to know way less, so people will actually explain it to you.
Right. And I think that has to do with cueing the people. And I've heard Ira say this before too, where you, if you act excited, they act excited.
Exactly.
And if you act in a way where it's okay to interrupt, it's okay to say what's on your mind, it's okay to interject.
Right.
You know, they go, okay, this is what's happening.
You create the culture of the interview. And if you tell them a personal story about yourself, it's human nature that they will tell you 9 times out of 10 a personal story about themselves. I interviewed this guy recently, Andy Greer, who had this really great story that we put on the show about coming out to his parents and then, like, you know, like storming off to the mall in a blaze of victory, or so he felt. He was like 19 at the time, and locked his keys in the car, and so his mother had to come and save him. And she gets in the car with him and says, you know what, that thing you said earlier, I'm gay too. You know, and it was like this big shock. When his mom came out to him, she said, don't tell your father. And I was like, oh my God, you had to keep that secret from your dad. And he's like, yeah. And I said, that sounds like the biggest secret. And he says it was. And I said, I'm trying to think of a bigger secret that you could possibly keep from your dad. And without missing a beat, he goes, murder.
You murdered somebody.
Yeah.
Or your mom murdered
My mom
somebody.
murdered somebody.
Your mom murdered somebody.
Yeah.
That would be bigger.
Yeah.
Or your mom is Spider-Man.
Yes.
That would be
but
bigger.
That's kind of how it felt, like my mom was Spider-Man in some way, because to me it was all so exciting.
He was one of the best interviewees that I've encountered of late, in part because like, it wasn't just me listening and like sort of seeing like how is the conversation going, like he was doing the same thing somehow. There was an NPR story about a battle in Iraq. I don't remember even when it was or when it happened, but like they said as a precursor, the host said in the intro, we've left the swears unbleeped.
NPR's Eric Westervelt is with an Army battalion involved in today's fighting. A warning, his report contains strong language that may not be suitable for all listeners.
And the reporter's embedded, and like he's in danger, and it's really a compelling story, and it was very well put together, and a real listen.
This is the sound of an RPG whizzing overhead before the tape goes blank as this reporter dives behind a Humvee. There's confusion as these ground troops scramble to take cover near a cement wall.
Where's the rest of my guys? Fuckers ain't unasked the truck. We'll get against the building here.
And at a certain point, the reporter says, this reporter. And I was like, oh my God, NPR is you know, thinks that the word I is more offensive than like the word fuck, you know?
Right.
That's changed a lot at the network. I feel like the network is really, they're not adhering as much to what I think of as outmoded, overly tired, you know, sort of traditions of broadcast news in specific and just journalism in particular. They're no longer confusing acknowledging that you're a human being with bias. That's what you want. Like you want it to sound, you don't want it to just sound natural, you want it to be natural, you know? You want someone to be talking just like they would if there was no mediation whatsoever. That's kind of the best of all possible worlds. You know, you guys could talk to each other with no mic in the room and no mediation, and it would be a tree falling in the forest.
It's just life, and how boring is that?
Exactly.
Right?
Right.
It's no good to anyone.
It's no good to anybody. Two people talking to each other without it being mediated.
What's the value in that?
What is the value of that?